about? What's it really about? What genre does it take?
What like the spine?
The spine.
Like one sentence? Like
no, I don't fucking Boy Meets Girl. I don't give a shit about that. Fuck Boy Meets Girl. Fuck motorcycle movie. No, what is really being said? What's really being seen? That's what you're talking about. Because the whole idea, man, is subversion. You want subversion on a massive level. You know what one of the greatest fucking scripts ever written in the history of Hollywood is?
What?
Top Gun.
Oh, come on.
Top Gun is fucking great. What is Top Gun? You think it's a story about a bunch of fighter pilots?
Yeah, it's about a bunch of guys waving their dicks around.
It is a story about a man's struggle with his own homosexuality. That's serious. That is what Top Gun is about, man. You've got Maverick, all right? He's on the edge, man. He's right on the fucking line, all right? And you've got Iceman and all his crew.
Right.
They're gay. They represent the gay man,
right.
All right? And they're saying, go the gay way, go the gay way. He could go both ways.
What about Kelly McGillis? Right?
Kelly McGillis, she's heterosexuality. She's saying, no. Go the normal way. Play by the rules, go the normal way. And they're saying, no, go the gay way. Be the gay way. Go for the gay way. All right, that is what's going on throughout that whole movie. He goes to her house, right? All right, it looks like they're going to have sex. You know, they're just kind of sitting back. He's taking a shower and everything. They don't have sex. He gets on the motorcycle, drives away. She's like, what the fuck is going on here?
Right.
Next scene you see her, she is in the elevator. She is dressed like a guy. She's got the cap on. She's got the aviator glasses. She's wearing the same jacket that the Iceman wears. She is, okay, this is how I gotta get this guy. This guy's going towards the gay way. So I gotta bring him back. I gotta bring him back from the gay way. So I'm gonna do that through subterfuge. I'm gonna dress like a man. All right? That is how she approaches it. But the real ending of the movie is when they fight the Migs at the end. All right? Because he has passed over into the gay way. They are this gay fighting fucking force. All right? And they're beating the Russians. The gays are beating the Russians. All right? And it's over and they fucking land. And Iceman has been trying to get Maverick the entire time. Finally, he's got him. All right? And what is the last fucking line that they have together? They're all hugging and kissing and happy with each other. And Ice comes up to Maverick and he says, man, you can ride my tail anytime. And what does Maverick say? Maverick, you can ride my sword fight! Sword fight! Sword fight! Fucking it!
You were talking about when you kind of focus on an idea and you get the mania for it. How do you sustain the mania when the filmmaking process takes so long? And especially, it seems like how do you shut out all the million other ideas that are flooding your head when you know you have to focus and make one thing?
Oh, that's a good question, but that's actually not that difficult insofar as before I settle in on what I'm going to do, I'm contemplating a lot of different things. Oh, there's that book that I've always wanted to turn into a movie. Maybe I'd start reading that again and go over my old notes. I explore some different ideas, see what stage in the incubator that they are at any given time, especially when I'm looking for inspiration. I'm always working on some film book project to some degree or another that it moves along by a couple of inches between each movie. I'm never in any hurry to do it.
Play tectonics.
Yeah, exactly. Well, oddly enough, it actually that usually breeds what I'm going to do next to some degree or another, because I work on different film book projects and stuff, and I love that type of writing, and I like the research that goes into that type of writing, and it brings me a lot of joy. But it's not as easy for me as screenplay story writing is, and so it's much more difficult. Yeah. So I'm working harder at it, and at some point, I've invested a lot in it, and it's hard, and then what am I doing? This is so difficult. Nobody is waiting for this. This is just for me, and I'm working so hard. And then I start trying to write a script or a story, and by comparison, it's so easy. It's so easy that I'm kind of off and running, from that point on. But in the case of what you're asking about is, I flirt, and it's almost a metaphor for falling in love. You date a lot of people and you flirt with a lot of people and everything's going great, but then you meet the right one. And once I realize that, this has grabbed me, and this is genuinely legit, and now I'm thinking about music choices for it and trying to find different music choices for it and web spinning about it, and maybe it gets me to actually start writing a little bit. And pretty shortly into that process, I'll probably end up writing something that's like, okay, I'm doing this now. this is now what I'm doing. Usually because I think it's so, whatever I've written is so good that I like, okay, this deserves to be explored. In the case of Django, the way that happened very organically. I had really no idea what I was going to do after Inglourious Bastards, but I'd had the idea for Django Unchained in my head for a long, long time. The idea of like a spaghetti western-ish black bounty hunter going and still arresting or killing people during slave times, and so I was in Japan doing my press on Inglourious Bastards, and Japan was like the last stop on the trip. So I'd done everything. This was my last official thing to do. And so I was there with a friend of mine, and we were in Japan. I had a day off, and I got pointed in the direction of a really cool soundtrack store. And in Japan, there's a really big niche following for spaghetti westerns. They call them macaroni westerns, and they're still real popular. And a lot of the spaghetti westerns you can't find in America, you can get in Japan, and almost all the soundtracks are available to one degree or another. So I loaded up on a bunch of CD soundtracks. And so then on my day off, you know how you do when you buy a bunch of records at a record store, you come home and you start playing them, and you're walking around and you're just zoning out and blissing out. And so being bombarded with all these Morricone, Riz Ortolani, Francesco Damasi soundtracks, I ended up sitting down, and I didn't even have – normally I have my notebooks with me and shit, but I didn't have anything. So I literally was using the hotel stationery at the, Tokyo Nikko or whatever it was, and wrote the opening scene of Django Unchained, where they're on the chain gang, they're walking through, and then the wagon shows up, and it's Schultz, and he's looking, and he has the conversation with the Brittle brother or the Speck brothers, and pretty much the way it is in the movie was how it was written on the little desk in the hotel room on the hotel stationery, and it was a good scene, and it set it off, and I wanted to know more, and so I knew halfway into that scene, I guess this is Django Unchained has been in my head for a long time, and I guess now is the time.
Wow. But that's an interesting way to put it. You said you wanted to know more, almost as though, like, as you're writing, you're sort of, the writing is, you're discovering along as it's coming out.
Well, I think that's really is the way you really need to do it. Now, once I got done with that scene, I mean, it's one of the benefits of starting with a classical on its own scene, like the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards or the opening scene of Django, that can literally be a scene unto itself. Now, where do I want to go from here becomes the question. But in that moment, at that situation, that's just good enough.
Right.
That is on its own. And what I've learned as time has gone on is, for a long time, I tried to think out everything in the story, even though I know things would completely change as I go on. However, now I've realized that it's not really. It doesn't do me much good to think too much past the middle. I mean, I might know where I want to go. I mean, I write genre pieces, so you have an idea what the third act's going to be, and Kill Bill. I guess she'll probably kill Bill at the end. All right, she's got a list. She's going to work down the list. All right, so the big choice is, well, who's who on the list? All right, and even that I fucked around with. All right, but a genre movie, you think you know where you're going, and you're probably right, and you have an idea of how you might want the ending to end as for both a movie and for an audience. But for the most part, you can kind of work out more or less what's going to get you to the middle. But to think beyond that is kind of silly because by the time you get to the middle when you've actually been writing it, well, it's a different story now. It's a different thing now. Now you are the characters. You know the characters. Things that you could never have known before you started writing are now, they're in your blood. It's like this entire, there is a mythology to my movies to some degree or another. And that mythology is delivered as I write. And I might have a checklist of things that I might want to do during the course of the time, but some of them, become irrelevant as you go on, and when other ones take their place, and some things that you thought could have been a big deal, well, they are a big deal. And some things maybe half the reason you wanted to write it, by the time you get to where that would happen, it's for something else. It's not for this. But by the time you get to the middle, that's where you want to be. You want to be this expert. You want to be in the middle of the story. You want to know who these people are. And now, with all this knowledge, now you figure out where you want to go for the second half.
But that's an interesting approach to writing, being like you have to be a good listener and you have to listen to your own characters once they're mostly formed.
Well, frankly, I only think it's screenwriters who think you're not supposed to do it that way.
Do you outline?
No, not really.
See, I don't either. I just write.
Yeah, you just write. I mean, it's like, some novelists, the more commercial novelists, write, I think like John Grisham or somebody, they write outlines because they don't want to get to that final chapter and go, oh my God, what the fuck do I do now? All right. I trust in, oh my God, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, I think that is part of it. Now I don't write a novel a year the way he does, and there's a reason for that. But I am trusting that I will know exactly what to do when I get there from having done the work, one way or the other. But it's that trust. You have to trust. You have to trust, that it's going to be there.
Yeah.
When you reach out.
Like, even to kind of give you an example, like in the case of something like Kill Bill, where it's like the first time I'm really kind of creating, for I don't know, lack of a better word, like a comic book mythology going on.
Like the Marvel Universe.
I'm totally creating my version of that. And I remember I was watching a movie once that I thought was the director did a talented job with it. Having said that, he was trying to kind of create his own world, but I realized he didn't know it that well. He hadn't thought about everything. He hadn't painted in every picture of that universe. So I knew I wasn't in good hands. He dealt with what he needed to deal with, but I know that there was a lot of questions he didn't ask. And I knew that when you create a mythology, forget about it. Stuff that never will make it to the movie. You need to know everything. You need to, I need to know how Bill was born, how Bill got to be Bill.
You're talking about actor subtext.
Yeah, but in the case of me, like I said, if you're creating a mythology, you got to know all the rules of that. It doesn't matter what the audience knows. They got to know you know. And now you can explain to the actors this is, I don't know, something as simple as, one of the rules of a Hanzo sword is once you unsheath it, it has to drink blood before it ever goes back in the sheath. Even if it just means you got to, put your thumb to it. It's thirsty. Now, Daryl Hannah doesn't do that when she's like, oh, hey, this is a pretty good sword. With Michael Madsen, and he's, dumb bitch. She's not going to say anything to her, So again, she kind of goes into the fight with, with the demerit against her.
Having that bad karma.
With that bad karma. Now, the audience doesn't need to know that, but it was important that the actors know that, and it's important that I know that. That there's more there. So I make it a point, even when it comes to slang. I go, look, is there anything you don't know what you're saying? I want you to know what you're saying, all right? Whatever, it could be any kind of expression. Well, according to Hoyle, this glass should be blah, blah, blah. Well, if you don't know what I'm referring to when I say according to Hoyle, then you're just spouting a line. Well, what does that mean, according to Hoyle? Well, there's a book of rules of card games, and it's called and it's the book of Hoyle, and that's an expression. So I have to explain, I want them to know what it is. But so I have them making references all the time.
You get great performances from these actors. Yeah. Why is that, you think?
Because
it really stands out in a lot of your movies, obviously.
Well, I think it's a three-pronged thing, I write good characters. I write interesting characters. Then I cast them well. And but part of casting well is usually, unless I'm writing it for somebody in particular, and sometimes that works out and sometimes that doesn't, it's about the character first. It's not the actor first. I don't have an obligation to give a groovy actor a role. I have an obligation to find the best person to play my character. They're my characters. They came from deep in my DNA, and I want them to have the perfect person to play them. I'm not writing theater where everybody for the next 20 years gets a crack at it. This is it.
But I think what you're saying there is other directors break down and they go with the groovy guy.
Yeah, well, it's kind of easy to do. It's almost the whole industry seems to be heading that way, and usually the groovy guy is groovy for a reason. So
Right.
all well and good. But if you really want it to be magical, like say Christoph Waltz as Londa, then it's got to be a focus where I'm looking for the right guy, and only the right guy will do. And then you just add to the fact that I know how to deal with actors. For lack of a better word, I speak actor talk, so I know how to get the best out of them and take care of them.
So on Switchblade Sisters, you have this piece where you talk about his cadence and how through his cadence he creates humor, and compared it to your dialogue in Pulp Fiction. So when I met Jack Hill, I said, "Who do you look to for dialogue?" And he names the playwright Strindberg, August Strindberg. So I wanted to ask you, kind of, do you ever look back to the classical writers, and who are the biggest influences on you in terms of dialogue, either writing or hearing it?
I actually think when it comes to my dialogue, I think the three writers that affected it the most as far as like a genuine influence would probably be a combination of Elmore Leonard, David Mamet, and Richard Pryor. And I think those were actual conscious influences in me finding my voice and my dialogue and character voices and stuff. However, while this other person wasn't influenced, and even to this day I don't really consider him an influence, when I watch some of this material, I do recognize a similar aspect to their dialogue is somebody like Paddy Chayefsky. When I watched Paddy Chayefsky, I was actually surprised that, oh, wow, that's, as I started to describe, once I started writing, other friends of mine kind of pointed out that there was a symmetry to our dialogue to some degree or another. But the funny thing about Paddy Chayefsky was it was almost via Paddy Chayefsky that I actually realized that I actually was a pretty good writer, and maybe want to think about exploring this a little bit. Because how I actually kind of discovered writing dialogue is I used to be an actor, and I'd be in acting classes. And so part of your thing in acting classes is to drum up scenes to do. And I always wanted to do scenes from movies and stuff. And then I didn't have access to any scripts or anything like that. So I would go and watch a movie. And then I could remember. I had a good memory. So I'd remember the scene. So I'd go home and write the scene down. And whatever I didn't remember, I would just fill in the blanks myself. Well, little by little, I would just start filling in more blanks and just kind of go off and do my own things and add to the scenes. That was my first attempt at writing dialogue with stuff like that. And I had forgotten I was doing a scene from Marty, Paddy Chayefsky's Marty, in class. And I was talking to the guy I did the scene with, and he goes, I mentioned what I just mentioned. He goes, "Yeah, Quentin, you're as good as Paddy Chayefsky." I go, "What are you talking about?" "Well, remember when we did Marty, and all of a sudden there's this monologue about the fountain?" "Yeah." "That's not in Marty, that's you." You gave me your handwritten version. I actually have Marty at home. And I go, there's no fountain. There's no monologue about a fountain in this scene. But it fit in perfect with the scene. And I was like, well, it's just as good as the Paddy Chayefsky stuff. And it was him. His name was Ronnie Coleman. And when he said that, it was like the first ding, little tiny dinner bell, like the one around on the side of a table, ding, ding, ding. All right, it was the first little ring that was like, oh, maybe I should pay attention to this. Maybe I should explore this a little bit more.
Crime films give you a chance to write like a really, muscular, fun, quotable dialogue. One of the things, though, that again, people don't talk about it right now, but one of the things that came out a lot, like when Reservoir Dogs came out, for instance, and then it was carried over with Pulp Fiction, was the fact that people would make reference to, say, David Mamet or something when it came to my dialogue, but one of the only people out there, or films out there, that they could really kind of point a reference to, as far as like the dialogue heavy and the male dialogue heavy aspect of it, other than David Mamet, was Barry Levinson. And people would always refer to Reservoir Dogs when it came out as something like, Tin Men with Guns, or Diner with Guns, because that was actually one of the only other movies that they could actually make a reference to that had young males, or males anyway, talking and expressing and actually talking about pop culture the way my characters do too.
No, I know that's the thing, is because to me, most movies that you see now, I mean, that used to be the thing about America, was the fact that Hollywood, forget America, Hollywood used to, that's what we did better than anybody else in the world. We told a really good story. Europe was where you had character-based films or mood-based films, but America, we told a story. We're the worst at it now, as far as I'm concerned.
At telling a story.
Telling a story. We don't tell a story. We tell a situation. Most of the movies that you see nowadays, and I'm not a Hollywood basher, because enough good movies come out of the Hollywood system every year to justify its existence, but without any apologies. However, a good majority of movies that come out, all right, you pretty much know everything you're going to see in the movie by the first 10 or 20 minutes. Now, that's not a story. A story is something that constantly unfolds. I'm not talking about like this quick left turn or a quick right turn or a big surprise. I'm talking about it unfolds. All right?
Yeah, but you don't believe in a linear storytelling.
Well, it's not. It's not so much I don't believe in it. It's the situation. It's not the fact that I'm on this big crusade against linear storytelling. All right, but it's the thing is, it's not the only game in town.
Now, the original structure of the script for True Romance is very different from the movie. The way it worked, even though it has almost identically the same scenes. I mean, really, except for the ending, it was the structure that Tony didn't use. Everything else, I mean, God, he did exactly what I wrote. I mean, it's pretty good. And all the scenes are there, they're just in different order. The way it worked initially was it would start with the Elvis, I'd fuck Elvis speech. Then there was the credits. Then there was the Drexel pussy-eating speech. And we don't know who's this guy, and he kills all those other guys, and we're like, what the fuck's going on? Right, we still don't know what's going on. I like that. Don't know what's going on, but it's all entertaining. Then the next scene, after the Drexel pussy-eating scene, is Clarence in Alabama showing up at Clarence's father's house, Dennis Hopper. And so the whole, story more or less about Drexel, her being his pimp and all that blah, 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 and the cocaine and all that stuff, all right, was told, you just kind of hear it through Clarence's version, but you don't quite hear the whole thing. But we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on, all right? And we only have Clarence's slight version. So when we were watching this scene, we don't really know who to believe or what's going on. Just two kids seem like sweet kids, all right? So they split. Then, he calls Dick Ritchie. What's it going to be coming up? Then there's the infamous or famous or whatever Christopher Walken Dennis Hopper scene. Now, how the structure really affects us in a big way, the biggest difference between the way the movie works and the way the structure works, is we don't know Clarence's story. We don't know exactly any of the whys of the wherefores about how he met Alabama, how he ended up taking the cocaine or anything. It's all just very sketchy. All right, all we have is the fact that we kind of like these two kids, even though we don't know anything about them. The biggest difference is, audiences, as long as they're in good hands, they like being curious. They don't like to be told everything, all right? If they think that they're in good hands, if they think the storyteller will eventually take care of them, they can wait if they think, it's not a mistake, if they think it's on purpose. And so Christopher Walken comes in, and he gives us our first real information about what happened. But his information is like, okay, here's what happened. Your dumb fuck son and his whore come in there blazing. They found out we were going to do a cocaine deal. They came in there, they shot everybody, killed everybody, completed a total fucking massacre, and they took the dope and ran. So that's the first time we've actually heard complete information about exactly what happened. And so our thought should be like, they did that? They're that crazy? They're that homicidal? All right, that was supposed to be the idea behind that. Then,
from that sequence, then we have Clarence arriving in Los Angeles and Hollywood. All right, and he gets together with Dick Ritchie, and then him and Dick in Alabama go out to Pink's hot dog stand, and they're talking, and then Dick literally says something to the effect of, so how did you meet Alabama? All right, and then he tells the story. All right, and that's the second act, and that starts with Clarence in the movie theater watching the Street Fighter triple feature in Alabama coming in. And then that goes on through the whole second act of the movie until leading up to Clarence killing Drexel. And after the killing of Drexel and finding the cocaine, from that point on, we pick up the movie. It comes back in the film to when Clarence shows Dick Ritchie the cocaine and about how to sell it, and Dick Ritchie's like flipping out. All right, and then that's the third act, and from that point on, the movie's like it is. All right, now the way that 3-act structure was supposed to work was this: the first act, everybody in the movie, with the possible exception of Cliff Worley, Dennis Hopper, knows so much more than we do. All the characters know what they're talking about. We don't know what they're talking about. All the characters know what they did, again, except for Cliff. We don't. All right? Everybody in the movie is way ahead of the audience. All right. The second act, the audience hears the whole story and catches up with the characters. The third act, and this is where it starts getting kind of cool, and it's the only thing I miss, is now the audience, well, you know what, I say I miss it, but actually this still works, all right. The audience now knows more than the characters. The audience is so much more hipper about what's going on and what's happening than any one of the characters in the movie, all right. You know, the audience knows that Clarence isn't working for a cop or anything like that to try to sell this cocaine. The audience knows that Bronson Pinchot's Elliot Blitzer, all right, is working with the cops. All right, the audience knows what's waiting for Clarence up in that hotel room, but we don't. The audience knows, but Clarence doesn't. You know, it's like everybody is ahead of all the characters. So that was the way it was supposed to be. Act 1, audience doesn't know shit. Characters know everything. Act 2, audience catches up. Act 3, audience knows far more than anybody in the movie.
Analogy I always use, because all of my writing techniques, I never took any writing classes or seminars or anything like that, or read any pamphlets. My whole thing was everything I learned as an actor, studying acting for 6 years, I've basically applied to writing. Now, like, if
what did you learn then?
Well, it's just like, well, I'll give you an actor analogy that works completely for me as a writer. All right, if I'm playing on, I don't know, whatever, Sugar Babies or something, you know, something really crazy. All right, Sugar Babies, okay, in a theater production. All right, and I'm driving on my way to the theater, and I hit a dog on the way to the theater that night. Okay, now that doesn't make you commit suicide after killing a dog, but it's going to affect you. Yeah. All right, okay, and no, I'm affected by that. Now the thing is, when I go out on stage, I have to bring that experience on with me, or what am I doing up there? All right, that is obviously going on with me at that time, and that needs to be on the stage.
It needs to be on the stage because it is what's happening inside of you?
Yeah, exactly. True. Right. That's it. It's because it's what's happening inside of me. Now, if I'm doing Sugar Babies or Death of a Salesman or You Can't Take It With You, that doesn't mean the play all of a sudden becomes about a dead dog. Yeah. All right. But it definitely doesn't. But it definitely, I'm not there unless I bring that on with me and make that work inside of the material. If I'm not, then you could just send a robot out there. That's just good acting. That's what you have to do. You can't deny anything. All right. Well, the same thing with me as a writer. If I was writing The Guns of the Navarone, all right, and then right at the beginning of writing it or in the middle of writing it, I break up with my girlfriend who I'm like madly in love with, and then my heart is shattered. All right. That's got to work into it. Now, the story is still about a bunch of commandos going to blow up a couple of cannons, all right? But that pain that I'm feeling has got to find its way into this story, or else what am I doing?
And translating to writing, meaning that whatever you're experiencing as a writer, you got to put into those characters, and you know how to do that.
Yeah, that's the thing I think that makes. That's why when people say, "Well, you're just making movies about other movies," I go, "Well, that's bull." To me, all my movies are. I'm working in a genre, no doubt about it. All right, and I respect the genre, no doubt about it.
And what's the genre in your own definition?
Well, in the ones I'm doing crime films.
Okay.
All right, and then like in the case of Reservoir Dogs, it's a subgenre crime film. It's a heist picture.
Right.
A bunch of guys get together and pull a robbery.
Right.
You've seen
Right.
a bunch of kind of movies like that before. And the thing is, though, and I respect the genre, and I'm jumping off from it. But to me, all the movies are very personal. All right, when I look at them, and I don't mean like I'm some crook. All right, but the thing about it though is like this group of friends will look at it and be like, "Oh, Quinn, I can't believe you talked about that." And this old girlfriend.
Because they identify
geez,
with the
Quentin,
experience.
You should be semi-embarrassed about certain people seeing your movie. I think when you're finished, if you're working on a personal level,
or else the work is not authentic.
Well, I don't want to make that blanket a statement, but I guess for me, yeah.
You're not extending yourself unless you're bringing all of that.
You've got to. You basically.
Why do you?
A writer. You should have this little voice inside of you saying, "Tell the truth."
Yeah.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Yeah.
All right. Reveal a few secrets.
And the truth
here.
is your life experience.
Exactly. That's the truth as I know it.
Right.
Well, it's just writing. I consider novelists real writers. Now, I actually consider screenwriters real writers too, and there's a whole aspect about the fact that screenwriting conceivably could be harder because of how you have to deliver within a certain page count in a way that a novelist doesn't have to some degree or another. It has more freedom as far as that's concerned. But I was listening to a podcast out of Australia where they were kind of going through a bunch of my screenplays, and they'd actually read the screenplay, so they were actually quoting things from the scripts that didn't make the movie. And then they were talking about how I would do these things in the scripts that will never play out in the movie. I'll give you one example of it, actually. Okay, in Kill Bill, there was a whole sequence that was taken out of the film where after the bride gets out of her coma and she's in the pussy wagon. Mm-hmm. She, it was in Texas somewhere, so she drives way out into the panhandle, and she comes across this oil derrick. Mm-hmm. And the idea is she has stashed all this shit in the ground. So, she's going to dig up a hole and pull out a footlocker, and it's going to have passports under a zillion different names. It's going to leave all kinds of money for her and all kinds of weapons, and this is what she's going to use to go on her revenge. But in the script, the way I have it written, she's looking for a rock, and she finds the rock, and then on the underside of the rock is an X, and then from that rock, she's going to walk 10 spaces, and that's where the footlocker will be buried. However, in the script I write, she turns over the rock, finds the X. If the X hadn't have been there, if she couldn't find the rock, she would have taken it as a sign that her revenge was never supposed to happen. And she would have dropped the entire idea. And so they make a big point about, yeah, well, he does that, and you're never going to get that across in the movie and whatever, but, he does it anyway. And why does he do that? And that's so strange that he would do that. I kind of like it, but that's so weird. It's writing. That's what writers do.
Exactly, yeah.
I've never understood the concept of a screenplay just being a blueprint for the movie. I do write them like novels. This is true
with you. Yes, this is true with you, yeah.
I do write them like novels. It's not crazy prose, that goes on forever, but there is a commitment to the prose. And there is a literary narrator.
Yes.
Talking to the audience who's reading it. And these scripts are meant to be read. To such a degree, to almost a crazy degree, in the case of something like Inglourious Basterds or Django and even Kill Bill, to such a degree that basically I've written a movie that really can't be done. It's so not a blueprint. It is so a novel with the exception of the dialogue broken down the way it is in a screenplay format, that I am stuck on set every day adapting my novel into a movie every day. And big sequences I know will I'm never going to film that. Right. But I don't know exactly which ones they're going to be until I get there, and then we cut them out of the film because the movie will be too long, it'll be too much money to shoot that sequence. But in the reading of the script, they were important.
Yeah,
they were important for their overall piece. Hateful Eight is a little bit, is a little bit more the play's the thing, all right. But I didn't have to figure it out so much the way I had to figure it out. But a lot of the things you're asking, though, I mean, it's just writing. I'm just committing to writing it. But in the same token, when you're talking about like a novelist, it's like in a novel, you have an idea where you're going with the piece.
Yes,
and I think like when you've written a novel, my guess would be that, at least for the first half of the novel, you have a really good idea what might end up happening, where your characters might end up going.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't even begin to really think about what's really going to happen in the second half because that was before you committed to being the characters. It was more before you committed to being the page and creating the world. So I literally, it's after a certain point, it's the characters that are going through the story and they're telling me what's going on. Even in the case of, like, say, The Hateful Eight. Without giving too much away, there is a aspect of, I'll say this much. I won't normally say it, but I will say it here. There's a case of a poisoned pot of coffee. I didn't know who poisoned the coffee for a long, long time. I didn't want to know. I didn't do the mystery thing where you solve it all and then write backwards. But not only that, even in the case of The Hateful Eight, as opposed to normally, since none of the other characters can trust anything that the other characters are saying, they say who they are, and you have to take them as that or not. I didn't want to know any more than the other characters did about the characters. So, when Chris Mannix shows up and says he's the sheriff, is he? Is he not? Well, I don't know yet. I'm not sure. I only know what John Ruth knows about him.
Right.
I only know what Major Warren knows about him, and all the way down the line. Even when it came to arriving at Minnie's haberdashery, and there's four other people there, I didn't know who those four other people were per se. I let them reveal themselves to me. By the time we did the movie, I had to know who all those characters really were and where they came from in order for me to talk to the actors about it. But in the first draft, I didn't want to know any more than a viewer or one of the other characters would know.
How is the final cut of Django different from what you initially wrote or envisioned?
And showed her. It's not, a better way to kind of describe it is when I'm writing, I mean, aside from for the most part, I don't think there is a caveat to this. When I'm writing, it's about the page. It's not about the movie. It's not about cinema or anything. It's about the literature of me putting my pen to paper and writing a good page and making it work completely as a literature document on itself. That's my first artistic contribution. And if I do my job right, by the end of the script, I should be having the thought, if I were to just publish this now and not make it, I'm done. I've done it. I could actually be okay with just saying that that's it. And then that can stand, and whoever wants to read it will read it, and I'm done. Now it's mine to F up if I go forward with it. Now, I always go forward with it, but I actually think for where I'm coming from, I want to love that script so much that I'm tempted to stop. I'm tempted to call myself a winner right then and there before I climb the mountain. So the point being of that is there's stuff that's in the script that I know will never ever make the movie, but it just makes the book, the piece of literature better. It's a better read. It's it's more emotionally satisfying. And then you can just like you do in an adaptation, you peel a lot of that stuff away.
So what is it? So you write True Romance.
So I write True Romance, and then tried for a long time to get it going, couldn't get it going.
Right.
Then I wrote Natural Born Killers.
Right.
Tried for a long time to get that going, couldn't get it going. Wasn't working in the video store anymore. I had some weird little odd jobs keeping
when
going.
When you say try to get it going, you'd mail it to studios?
No, I was actually trying to raise the money independently to shoot it and stuff. I didn't think anyone wanted to buy it, and nor did anyone want to buy it.
Because
Now, who are you trying to raise money from? Did you know the money people?
I didn't. Well, that was part of the problem. We didn't know anybody, but we were
trying. And I would. I think it takes a lot of imagination to look at your scripts and say, "Hey, this would be a hit film," because they're out there, right?
Well, what ended up happening was, I mean, True Romance could definitely show that I could write for sure. However, though, but movies have changed. True Romance at the time when it came out, not even the movie, but when the script, everyone read it and thought, like, this is the wrong way to do it. He's taught the dialogue scenes go on too long. There's too many cuss words. There's this, there's that. It seemed like I didn't know what I was doing because writing wasn't done that way in scripts.
Right.
Maybe David Mamet at the most, but that's it.
So, in other words, you broke the format in how you write a screenplay.
I couldn't get past the readers at studios.
Right.
The minute people actually in the studios who read boring scripts all the time actually read my shit, they were like, this shit is awesome. Send it right to us. But the readers would never let it get there.
Because readers at studios are afraid to pass it on because they look foolish if they if they pass on a real
they're actually like the most strident group out there as far as like everything has to be properly done.
Right, because they're probably clueless. That's maybe why they're readers, And studios have to do that. They get so many scripts. They only go with big studios go with maybe 13 movies a year if they're really happening. And the readers are the ones who kind of look through everything.
Yes,
it's
like they deadly catch. They get all this shit from the net.
Right, and they have to read everything because they don't want to miss out on the next big film.
Right, yet they miss out on the next big film all the time.
And I've always just thought, I mean, what really got everything kind of truly going for me, you could point out a lot of different things, but the bottom line is the fact that I realized that even the group of people I hung around with, they were all great fellas and great gals. But, it was easy for me to think that I was doing a lot because I was doing more to try to move myself forward than they were. But, that's not, I'm a big fish in a puddle. So what? All right, they're not doing anything. All right, so I'm doing more than them. But I realized that actually I need to get my ass out to Hollywood and meet other people who are like in my category or working a little higher, and I should be the weakest link in my chain that I have, and that'll make me be stronger. It'll make me run faster. I mean, like an analogy I've always used is, all right, if you run the 100-yard dash with people that can't run as fast as you, you'll win. Hands down, you know that. But if you run with people much faster than you, all right, you might come in last every single time, but your time will be better. Because they're making you run all the faster. They're making you dig down just a little bit more. It doesn't matter that you won. Your time is faster. And that's what I knew I had to do. I had to get out of Loserville and throw myself into a place where, like, this is what the fuckers do for a living.
And the Oscar goes to Mr. Tarantino.
This is the second Academy Award and fifth nomination for Quentin Tarantino. He took home his first Oscar in this category for Pulp Fiction.
That's cool. Charlize is my neighbor. Very nice to get this from you. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Boy, oh boy. I've been saying things like I want to thank the actors for what they've done when it comes to my script. And it's not just an easy thing to say. It really is why I'm standing here. I actually think if people are like knowing about my movies 30 or 50 years from now, it's going to be because of the characters that I created. And I really only got one chance to get it right. I have to cast the right people to make those characters come alive and hopefully live for a long time. And boy, this time, did I do it. Thank you so much, guys. Leo ain't over there, but I'm thanking him too. Okay, I know, I'm getting off. But one last thing. I would like to say that it's such an honor to get it this year because I have to say, in both the original and the adapted categories, the writing is just fantastic. This will be the writer's year, man. Thank you very much. I love this. I love the competition. You guys are all wonderful. Peace out. Most of these people that talk about writing for screenplays
if they were teaching acting, they would be thrown out and ridiculed. Because at the end of the day, it does seem like, and I'm lumping a whole lot of people, some who may have interesting insights, into one big giant group, and that's probably unfair. But again, coming from like a teaching acting aspect, which is how I learned to write, they all seem to me, a very actor bad word, they all seem to be result oriented. And real actors aren't result oriented. But real writers aren't result oriented. I mean, the actor wants everything they do to be magnificent, and the writer wants everything they do to be magnificent. But novelists aren't result oriented. It's the doing of it. It's the process. It's the getting there. It's the journey. It's the journey is everything. The journey makes the destination worthwhile. You can only have a worthwhile destination after you've had a worthwhile journey. And novelists trust that. Actors trust that. They trust that if they live the part and they are honest and they don't try to predetermine too much, that the ultimate end result will be rewarding. And it seems like people who teach screenwriting go in the opposite direction. Now that is, I'm tar and feathering with a big bunch of feathers and a big gigantic trough of a brush of tar. And maybe some people that I'm hitting with that don't deserve that. But at the end of the day, that seems to be what I hear. And it's also understandable because they have to get the results within 120 or 130 pages. And, you know, maybe if you're judging it by a coloring book and you're getting A's for keeping your colors inside of the lines, then maybe they are right. But that's not how I want to judge it, you know. And it can be messy and and I can write a bunch of stuff and then I have to reduce it down to a certain amount in order to make a movie. But that whole process of doing all that is what makes the movie, if you do it right. Yeah, you could go on the kind of process that I go on and write a bunch of stuff and shoot a bunch of stuff, and then you have to drop a bunch of stuff, and then what ends up coming out is a facsimile of what it is you intended. Well, that would be a fucking drag, and you would have failed. All right? I don't think I've failed. I've succeeded. I've succeeded in a weird way than I could have ever imagined during the writing process, but I've succeeded. And also, where I'm coming from, actually, is those scenes happen. We are informed by those scenes. Yet, it's different, though. There is an interesting thing. Editing is its own form of writing that needs to be taken into account. Because the thing is, if I included every scene, every single scene, forget about, say we were India, say we were Russia, and there's no time limit for what's playing at the multiplex. That makes your movie better the longer it is, all right? If that were the case, you would see a different story than the one that you see now, because things would have happened that didn't happen in the version that I released. And once those things happen, they've happened, and they have affected everything. They affect the characters. They affect everyone's knowledge about what's going on. Now, I leave that out. Now, I meant to leave that out. Now, you're not supposed to know what those different things are, because that's not the story I'm telling now. I am telling now this story. But that is kind of interesting. You know, it is interesting by what you reveal and what you don't reveal. The actors said it. they worked from it. They were informed by everything because that all happened. But now I lose a couple of scenes. The actors were informed by it, but you're not informed by it. Now you only have the knowledge that you're given. Well, that's storytelling. That's part of my job.